Hello, I'm Raggy Omar and this is Witness. If you could conjure up an image of the quintessential English community, it would look an awful lot like the small town of Clitheroe in the north of England. It has a close-knit population of around 16,000, an ancient castle on a hill and an Anglican church established in 1122. It nestles in the beautiful rolling hills of Lancashire, cradle of the Industrial Revolution. But today, Clitheroe has become a symbol of the divisions and arguments about multiculturalism and the place of Islam in modern Britain. Because after nearly 40 years of trying, the tiny Muslim community there has just been given permission to open a mosque in one of the town's most imposing and well-known churches. Paul Sapin's film shows a small community clinging to its traditions, whilst another seeks recognition, when the old Mount Zion Methodist Church comes under new management.
It's the last night of the proms and the flags are out in Clitheroe. It's when the town comes together and celebrates being English. But behind the celebrations is an identity crisis.
Have your say at ribblevalleyradio.org.uk. Tell us what issues are on your mind.
The main story that we're going to be looking at tonight is the successful Clitheroe Mosque application. How do you feel about it? Are you pleased? Are you disappointed? Are you angry? Do get in touch.
Clitheroe has a population of 16,000. Its Muslim community numbers 300 and they are pleased to be getting a mosque. But the majority in the town are disappointed and some are angry. As everywhere, stallholders in the market get all the town gossip.
The mosque that all the talks about at the moment is something that people don't want.
It's the stepping stone to change, and they're going to have to adapt or not adapt. And the worrying thing is they will resist adapting.
Well, I think people think that this is their town that is very, very English. You know, it's a gorgeous market, it's got all little boutique shops.
Strikers row for British democracy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There's a market town not far from here, Blackburn, and it has an Asian mayor. And what's that about? It's an old Lancashire cotton town. And that's what's in people's mind. They do not want to lose their roots.
Well, this morning, several customers were saying something about they'd had letters to say they were being asked to buy a brick to build this place. They don't like it at all.
Only one left, then I can go home.
There may be resistance, I'm sure there'll be resistance, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to happen.
Thank you very much. That's all he got, he's gone. I can go home now.
Tell us what you think. Maybe you're going to uproot and leave this town. Are you one of the residents living nearby who feels his house prices might decline? Do get in touch. 01200 427 999.
Mount Zion, the building that will house the mosque, achieved celebrity status in 1954 when it was the subject of a painting by L.S. Lowry. In 2006, it achieved notoriety when it was proposed as a mosque. The local authority has been less than happy with all the fuss, particularly its head of planning, Richard Sherris.
I think certainly the Mount Zion planning application has been high profile. I mean, it'd be ridiculous to say anything else. I mean, it's been in the international press and on the television and everything else. Quite how that will affect the future, I'm not sure.
Leader of the mosque campaign, Shiraz Arshad, is also unsure what the future holds.
It's going to be very difficult, I think, for people to stomach. I think, you know, the whole build-up to the planning permission and the high profile and the sort of feeling and the sense of, you know, difficulty people had with even the concept of a mosque. I think it might be a little bit more difficult when it becomes a reality as well.
Since 1979, there have been 6 applications to build a mosque in Clitheroe, and for 30 years the campaigners have faced increasing hostility. The last unsuccessful proposal erupted in racist abuse which the council failed to control. Now, the council has finally granted permission for a mosque to be built.
We were characterised that we had turned down all these applications, and the implication was that we shouldn't have done that. I mean, I had letters from senior members of the clergy saying that I hope this time you're going to look at this application on planning grounds and not refuse it on racist grounds, which upset me greatly.
Mount Zion is a former Methodist chapel, and this may be one reason for the hostility from residents here. The campaigners are sensitive to this issue. They've promised there will be no minarets, domes, or even calls to prayer. They want the building to stay just as it is. In fact, the mosque will be part of a multi-faith centre open to the whole community. The great benefit for the Muslims here is the space available in this historic building. Mount Zion is right in the centre of town, and a far cry from the cramped terraced house which Clitheroe's Muslims have used for prayer for 30 years. The chairman of that building is Farouk Hussain, who was also involved in the campaign for the Mount Zion Mosque.
We're on Holden Street in Clitheroe, and it's a terrace street with about 13 houses down this side. And the end house is the Medina Islamic Education Centre, and it was the original site at which the Muslim community applied for planning permission as far back as 1979.
The campaigners were proposing a modest extension to this end terrace to convert it into a mosque. Repeatedly, the plans were modified, but each was rejected, and there was much local hostility to the idea.
Now, the building itself has undergone a lot of sort of attacks here, and we've had obviously racist graffiti, tried to write the word nigger, but obviously the spelling wasn't quite up to scratch there, and the window's boarded up because it's had so many attacks on it. The door's been kicked in as well lots of times. There was a car parked in the wasteland at the side there, and that got torched.
A lot of people in Clitheroe is going to be against the mosque. So they're going to cause trouble down
I think it's going to cause a lot of fighting as well.
Fired? Something happened
yeah,
to it,
it gets petrol bombed and stuff like that.
There's a good by trouble
The last mosque, it got a pig's head put through window. Pig's head, someone was, do you know the house mosque what we're on about? That got our pig's head thrown through the window. The car outside, they had a car outside, that got petrol bombed. So but we don't know who did it because we were only young then, if you know what I mean. We don't know all about it because we were only young, but...
Over a number of years, the building has undergone a lot of damage and a lot of destruction to it, to the extent that, you know, the Muslim community sort of stopped replacing the board on the window, basically, because it was counterproductive. No sooner had it been replaced than it was kicked in again. And the residents admit that it shot it, but if they're not prepared to sort of cooperate with the police and the Muslim community and inform as to who's responsible, then unfortunately the building is just going to remain in this current state.
End of the day, that used to be a church and it shouldn't be being turned into a mosque.
We went over to Pakistan, moved into a village in Pakistan and said, can we make a church? They wouldn't say, yeah, you can, would they?
No.
For the most part, the teenagers of Clitheroe are busy doing what teenagers do everywhere, having fun and hurting no one. But the young people in the park seem particularly keen to talk not only about the mosque issue, but Muslims in general. Did they think most people shared their views?
Well,
yeah,
a lot of older people don't.
Yeah, a lot of older people do.
They don't.
A lot of the Clitheroe BNP do.
Yeah, BNP.
This has been a worrying development for the Muslim community here. The interest that the far-right British National Party, the BNP, has taken in their campaign for a mosque. The last two local elections have seen the BNP and the English First Party fielding candidates. And it's the same old story. It's the white people that are under attack. The BNP candidate who stood in Clitheroe's local elections is Gavin McQuaid.
You've got to look after our children. Do we want this for our children? Do we want our children to be brought up in a society that promotes racism? Because ultimately a multiracial society promotes racism. It's where it comes from. You don't. If you look at any society or any small town that is predominantly white European, you don't get racial tension.
Paul Franklin stood as a candidate in Clitheroe for the English First Party.
When you look at the surrounding towns, we've got places like Blackburn and Burnley and Accrington round and about, and they haven't got just one mosque. Obviously, they all started with just one mosque, which is why we didn't want one in the first place. And they look like parts of Baghdad, to be honest. When you go around there, you see them as you get off the train. You see them in town centres. They're just everywhere, and it feels kind of a bit of like an invasion.
Like if there was a mosque here, most people my age would probably just go down and vandalise it and cause trouble down there.
Yeah, they would.
Because they don't
Not
want
saying
it.
I would. I'm not
It's
saying
going
I
to make
would.
the teenagers are going to cause trouble there.
But Mount Zion is no stranger to trouble. Methodists first came to Clitheroe in the 1700s. They were treated as outsiders by the Orthodox congregations and they suffered for it. Mount Zion's last secretary, Fred Braithwaite, knows the history.
The early Methodists in Clitheroe had to face a lot of opposition, a deal of it physical. Eventually they got a foothold and struggled to find premises suitable for worship. The Mount Zion church itself was built for £3,000, which in the early 1880s was a princely sum of money. Then along come the Muslims, and they have also faced opposition in finding a place due to vociferous opposition from some of the townspeople, until eventually the town council agreed to them having Mount Zion as a mosque.
After the break, Clitheroe's Muslims speak about what they think is behind the opposition to the mosque.